hardly no beds in the UK, no like Scotland and Wales. So some of these people that are mentally poorly and mentally ill have to wait into the A&E places with beds and stuff. There's not enough mental hospitals, but you reckon there should be more mental hospitals and more staff, more beds to make people well. But there's not. The system's overloading and overflowing itself. I don't know if you guys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, notice yourself. I'm going to put that onto the program now. Sorry for talking so much, but
I'm just reading here the story in the Times. And it says, of course, it reminds me, and I didn't even get to this bit.
It's LBT.
The Prime Minister made cutting waiting times one of his 5 priorities. So this is a national priority, and 250 people are dying each week. I mean, this is shocking. This is something he says he cares about, and more than 250 people extra are dying each week. So if this is one of Rishi Sunak's priorities, I'd hate it if it wasn't a priority. Would that figure be 500? It's going south. When I was a junior minister in the Tony Blair government, we got it down to a 4-hour wait. We sustained that right up to 2010. It's gone south under this government, terribly south now, with unnecessary loss of life as a consequence of this. A hell of a lot of work went into reducing A&E times. A lot of work's going to have to go in once again. Chuck, you're an A&E doctor. Thank you for calling in.
Hey, David. Brilliant. I've always wanted to speak to you. So great discussion. Basically, I've just finished the night shift now.
Oh my God, you must be knackered. Yeah. What time did you start last night?
Knackered. Yeah.
What time did you start?
9. Yeah, 9 to 9. So it's a 12-hour.
Right.
It's a bit.
Are you home yet, or are you?
Actually, interestingly enough, I'm now going to National Trust with my family. So I'm
well done.
Yeah.
Bank holiday Monday, and you're taking them to a National Trust, but maybe you can get a little sleep on one of the sort of chaise lounge or something in the house. Get a little bit. What is going on in A&E?
Yeah, so basically, it gives you some context. So I work in the mental health team, and so what ends up happening is, so for example, yesterday, classic example, patient came in, was feeling suicidal. I did a risk assessment along with the other psychiatric liaison nurses, and we thought, okay, this patient, it's too dangerous for them to go home. So we made a decision to admit them. But the problem is they need to be admitted in a mental health bed.
Yeah.
But because the mental health units are completely rammed, absolutely rammed, no beds available at all, that person ends up waiting in A&E. And I kid you not, it's very, very, very common that the patient can wait in A&E for about 3-4 days.
And 3-4 days?
3-4 days. And so you end up getting, these are A&E beds. And so you end up getting lots of people in A&E waiting to be seen, but there's literally no rooms to see them. So this is, I don't know why, it doesn't seem like this is common knowledge, but you talk to the NHS staff, as you know, you've worked in this space, so you understand there are massive issues with the backlog of, for example, like I said, the mental health beds completely jam-packed, and it pushes and backs up the entire system. So I told my patient yesterday, actually a couple of them, I said, I'm so sorry, I think you need to come in, but unfortunately, you might be where you are now for about 2-3 days at least. And this is just the system. This is the system we're up against.
This is not making. This is the other thing about this that I remember is it makes people who aren't well sicker.
Yeah.
Waiting that long.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Like, you're dealing with people who are very, very high risk. In many cases, what we found is patients who, for example, if they have addiction problems or if there's other things going on, they end up leaving and then they end up coming back, and it's like, oh no, this person's too risky, and then you're balancing different amounts of risk. Or if it's, for example, you have incredibly sick patients, again, waiting in A&E, and A&E staff, they'll triage as best as they can. But ultimately, if you literally don't have anywhere to see these patients, then you end up getting people, absolutely, on trolleys who are quite literally in front of your eyes deteriorating, and you only have so much. For example, again, yesterday, there was, unfortunately, some patients came in and they had a massive road traffic accident. And A&E, you obviously prioritise. So boom, they went straight to RESUK, the top of the list. And then you get people who are actually really sick as well, but they're obviously not as sick as someone who's had a traumatic RTA, road traffic accident. And so that's literally, you're balancing risk constantly. And people I'm not remotely surprised at the figures that have come out, because this is quite literally what we're facing every single day.
Jenny has texted in. She says, "Hi David, I'm a nurse in a small hospital. I worked previously in an acute hospital and it's just horrendous. The other month I couldn't send a patient in who was 102 years old, as the paramedics said the waiting list was more than 15 hours. I've been in the NHS for 27 years. It's an absolute mess." Thank you, Jenny, for texting in. And there's another one here from Duncan in Worcester. He says, "David, it's even wider than you rightly say. Health inequalities are a key concern. People in deprived areas die younger, but also spend more years in poor health. They're also more likely to be admitted to hospital for non-elective care. It all starts with social injustice." Beautifully put, absolutely right to mention health inequalities and how this affects the poorest in our society. And another one here from Zara in West Ham. "My grandmother had a stroke in 2022. My auntie reached her house in Wembley from Surrey before the ambulance did. Oh my God. She lived 10 minutes from hospital and she didn't survive."
I just wanted to call because to share my experience, or my daughter's experience in A&E. Last October, we attended A&E. She'd had sharp head pains and some nausea and vomiting. She had a history of having an astrocytoma removed from her cerebellum in her brain.
Can you explain what that is for those who don't understand?
So she was diagnosed in 2022 with a tumour in her cerebellum, which is the lower part of your brain at the back in a cavity, and part of the tumour had grown into her brain stem.
Yeah.
It was found through an MRI scan, and she received really good treatment. She was sent to hospital immediately after the MRI scan at a clinic, and then transferred to a specialist hospital, had surgery within 4 days, recovered really well. Within a week was home, and then 14 months later, last October, she developed some short, sharp headaches and some nausea and vomiting. And I believed it to be hydrocephalus, which can be caused by the brain tumour, and she'd had it mildly when she'd initially been diagnosed. So we took her to our local A&E. Well, I took her, and we gave the symptoms, and I said what I believed it to be.
How old is your daughter, by the way?
She was 19 then, at that time in October. So she was a student studying criminology at Greenwich University in her second year.
Wonderful.
And so we went, and she had these short, sharp headaches. We went into A&E, explained the situation. We waited 3.5 hours to get a CT scan or to be seen by a doctor. She had the CT scan. The doctor reviewed it immediately and said there was no hydrocephalus showing. We were sent back to the waiting room for another 2 hours, and then the doctor ran out panicking, saying it's severe hydrocephalus. We have to get her to RESUK. She was taken to RESUK, and there was some to and fro in between the specialist hospital about transferring her. And when they eventually transferred her after me demanding that they did so, because that's where she needed to be. She needed a shunt to relieve the swelling on her brain. The ambulance came, we got in the ambulance, but unfortunately before we could leave our local hospital, she went into cardiac arrest. They got her back after 8 minutes, but unfortunately due to the damage in her brain, even though she was transferred to the specialist neurological hospital in our area, she was pronounced brainstem dead the next day. And I believe that if she'd been prioritised correctly, maybe if the doctors had a bit more understanding of what her symptoms were, and put that together with her history, which I was telling, that they might be able to transfer her sooner and she might have survived.
Catherine, I'm so sorry. I'm so, so sorry. You're a 19-year-old beautiful girl.
Yep. And she was just wiped out.
It brings tears to your eyes. It brings tears to my eyes, and I'm so, 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 so sorry. And I guess you know, the news today that people are dying because of the weights, and this really just brings it home. It just brings it home.
It does. It's just, I mean, I've worked for the NHS for 22 years, so I understand the pressures and stuff. Although I'm not clinical, I just think that it's just a mess. It's just people just aren't getting the help they need. People aren't getting prioritised quickly enough. Everything's just too full. It's just not working. It didn't work for her. It worked the first time, but it didn't work when she needed them again.
Catherine, in your experience, those 22 years that you had working in the NHS, what would good have looked like that might have meant that your daughter was still with us? What would good have looked like?
I think if we'd continued to increase our capacity and our staffing to reflect the demand rising, but unfortunately we kind of didn't increase it. We tried to push things out in different directions, and unfortunately it means that nobody can get doctor's appointments at the moment. It's impossible to get a doctor's appointment, so therefore if you get people end up going to A&E that potentially could be seen in their local community, and then that puts more pressure on A&E. Then when A&E is for really sick people, when really sick people go to A&E, unfortunately, if they're prioritised incorrectly, the waits are so long because the people are there that really could be seen in the community, and through no fault of their own, they can't get seen because there's no one to see them.
Catherine, how are you doing? How are you and your family doing?
It's really tough. It's really hard. We're nearly 6 months along the line now since she passed away, and it's coming up to her, what would have been her 20th birthday in May. And, it's just that sense of loss and that sense of injustice and unfairness. And, there's still an ongoing investigation into her death open with the coroner, so we haven't registered her death or anything like that yet. We don't know whether it'll go to inquest or not, but it's just the unfairness of it all. It just makes you so, it's just awful.
My wife of 34 years died at 52 in
Alan,
2020.
that's the same age I am. I mean, that's...
Yeah. Unfortunately, again, it started in A&E. She had tummy pains. She was working 2 jobs. And they told us we were going to be roughly waiting 8 hours to come back tomorrow. So we went the next day. Another 6 hours before we finally got to see someone. We got to see someone, and they did a CAT scan and said it was a bowels were caught inside on a previous pregnancy, a section that she'd had. And it was a very routine operate surgery, probably 3 or 4 hours. So they did a CAT scan. Didn't pick up on anything else. It's just a bowel problem. They finally give us a date for surgery, which was 6 months after. They did the surgery. Vicky went home, my wife. We went home, and 2 lumps started to appear. And the speed that the lumps were growing was unbelievable. Within 6 months, I would say that the 2 lumps, the 2 hernias, what they turned out to be, had grown to about 2 foot. We used to go to the doctors every other day.
That's massive, Alan.
I know, and she dragged these 2 lumps about with her to work. She worked at a local college and cared for people at night. She worked for a care company. And she dragged these 2 lumps about with her for 2 years. They wouldn't see it. They wouldn't admit that they'd caused the hernias. But like I said, they must have done, because the CAT scan was done previously to them repairing the bowel problem. This went on and on and on, 2 years, and a doctor, her own doctor, a doctor local to us, he said, look, it's obvious for hernias. I don't know why they're denying it, but all I can think is they haven't got any money. to do the surgery, any time or money to do the surgery. And then a week after, her own doctor contacted a different hospital in a different city, and he said yes, I'll do the surgery straight away. So we went to the different hospital, and my wife of 34 years from school days, who I love very dearly.
We can feel the powerful love that you had for her in your voice.
Yes, and I miss her every day.
Oh, God, Alan.
He opened his stomach up and he said it was vile. He said, obviously there were hernias, and every day the hospital had denied it. There's no hernias, we can't do anything to help you. This doctor did a 9-hour surgery, took the hernias out. I don't know what else he took out. I don't know what organs were infected. But she died 2 days later.
She must have been in incredible pain, Alan.
Well, yeah, the pain and the original hospital sent her home with the stomach leaking. There were no aftercare. Nobody come into the house. I had to do it all.
You don't expect this in the sixth richest economy in the world, do you? I mean,
no, it's like a third world country. And like you were saying, David, if you got it down to 4 hours A&E, surely there's a blueprint for that. Everything else, to me, are just excuses and overspending where it doesn't need to be.
Alan, have you been to see your local MP?
It's been to the.
It
went through the coroner.
Okay.
But because this doctor took all her parts away, the coroner really couldn't make
an assessment,
true written statement. And then we went to the hearing. What you talk about?
The inquest or the.
We had a 2-day inquest, but again, how can the inquest make a statement or a decision when they previously took everything out of it?
Oh,
all the organs that were infected and the mesh, and they just can't. And these hearings, I think they've had the time because such as we were told we couldn't speak at the hearing. It was just to hear from the doctors that day. And the second day I didn't even bother going because there's too much time now with doctors at the hospital, in my mind, spent on filling paperwork in.
Alan, I think there are lots of messages coming in of support to you, and thank you for sharing. It must be incredibly difficult.
Well, there we go. It's not easy for anybody. And it's a shame the NHS is the way it is. It really is a shame. I don't know what else is going to be on here unless I just leave it at this video and make another video. Thank you for all joining me. See you in the next one. Peace.